If you picture a giant of modern literature, you probably imagine a celebrated intellectual, someone whose words were applauded during his lifetime, receiving praise from critics, moving through high society, literary salons, and basking in the warmth of fame. But what if I told you that the author whose work and name became an international adjective for modern existential dread died almost entirely unknown? What if the man who gave voice to the terrifying absurdity of the 20th century spent his prime years as an exhausted, overworked insurance bureaucrat, terrified of his own father, and ultimately ordered his closest friend to burn every single one of his manuscripts upon death? This is the story of Franz Kafka. He didn't write for fame and fortune or literary prestige. He wrote because he was tormented by a feeling of profound alienation from society, from his religion, from his family, and even from his own physical body. Yet in mapping his own personal nightmares, Kafka inadvertently predicted the psychological, bureaucratic, and totalitarian landscape of the modern world. To understand Kafka's inner world, we have to travel back to Prague in 1883. Then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Franz was born into a middle-class German-speaking Jewish family living at a complex cultural crossroad. He was a minority within a minority, neither fully integrated into Czech society nor entirely comfortable with the traditional Jewish community. But the truest, darkest shadow hanging over his young life was his father, Hermann Kafka. Hermann was a self-made, physically imposing, and domineering retail merchant who had fought his way up from poverty. He viewed his frail, sensitive, and artistic son with sheer contempt, demanding that Franz must conform to his masculine, pragmatic ideas. Franz lived in perpetual terror of his father's booming voice, unpredictable temper, and harsh disapproval. This toxic dynamic left Kafka with a sense of deep inadequacy. Hobby or a passion project, it was a desperate, almost religious struggle for mental survival. In the autumn of 1912, during an extraordinary burst of creative intensity, he wrote the Metamorphosis. The story opens with one of the most iconic lines in all of the world literature. Gregor Samsa wakes up one morning from uneasy dreams to find himself transformed in his bed into a monstrous insect. What makes this novella so uniquely unsettling isn't just the biological transformation, but actually Gregor's reaction to it. Instead of screaming in terror about becoming a giant bug, Gregor's immediate panic is that he will be late for the morning train, lose his job as a traveling salesman, and fail to support his demanding family. In this surreal masterpiece, Kafka captured the ultimate tragedy of modern economic life, the paralyzing fear of being a burden, the guilt of uselessness, and the terrifying speed with which society casts an individual, pardon my French, the moment they can no longer produce value. Kafka's personal life was as painful as his writing. He desperately craved human intimacy, yet he was utterly terrified that the emotional demands of marriage and family life would destroy the quiet sanctuary he needed to write. He fell in love multiple times, actually, most famously with a woman called Belize Barr, to whom he became engaged twice. But their relationship existed almost entirely on paper. Kafka sent her hundreds of passionate, self-analytical letters, yet he repeatedly backed out of marriage whenever the reality of living together drew near. He maintained similar intense, intellectually electric correspondence with Czech journalist Milena Jisenka, and in his final years found brief moments of genuine peace with Dora Diamond. Throughout it all, Kafka struggled with chronic insomnia, severe migraines, anxiety, and digestive issues. Viewing his frail body as a traitor to his mind, in August 1917, at the age of 34, Kafka woke up coughing up his blood. He was diagnosed with pulmonary tuberculosis, an incurable and fatal disease at the time. Well, now it's curable. Rather than reacting with pure horror, Kafka viewed his diagnosis with a strange sense of relief, a physical manifestation of the emotional breakdown he had felt internally for years. Forced to take extended leaves of absence from his job, he spent his remaining years moving between sanatoriums and his family's home. As his physical body slowly deteriorated, his literary vision reached its absolute peak. He wrote The Trial, the harrowing story of Joseph K., a man arrested and prosecuted by an elusive, omnipotent authority for a crime that is never revealed to him, leading to his eventual execution like a dog. In The Castle, a protagonist known simply as K arrives in a snowbound village, spending the rest of his life attempting to gain access to the mysterious authority that governs the town, only to be met with endless evasion and indifference. Kafka captured the horrifying, disoriented feeling of being trapped inside a system you can neither comprehend nor escape, a reality so distinct that the world had to invent a new word for it, known as Kafkaesque. So, if your friends show you a bureaucratic process that is extremely complex and doesn't have a real solution, you can call that and term it as Kafkaesque. By early 1924, the tuberculosis had metastasized to Kafka's throat. Swallowing food or water became an excruciating ordeal, and he was reduced to a ghost of his former self. In his final weeks at the sanatorium in Kurling near Vienna, Kafka lost his voice entirely and could only communicate with those around him by scribbling short notes on scraps of paper. He passed away on June 3, 1924, just 1 month shy of his 41st birthday. Before he died, Kafka left two written letters for his closest friends, literary executor and fellow writer Max Brod. His instructions were explicit, absolute, and uncompromising. Dearest Max, my last request, everything I leave behind me in the way of my diaries, manuscripts, letters, my own and others, sketches, and so on, to be buried unread to the last page. Kafka truly believed that his life had been a failure, his work incomplete, and his stories unworthy of being read by future generations. Well, let's see about that. Max Brod was faced with an agonizing choice: honor his best friend's dying wish, or save what he knew to be a literary genius. Ultimately, Brod committed the ultimate betrayal of friendship and performed the greatest service to human culture. I don't know if it's the greatest, but it's one of them up there. Refusing to burn the papers, Brod spent the next several years painstakingly collecting, editing, and publishing Kafka's unfinished novels, diaries, and short stories, carefully piecing together each piece of his manuscripts because they were written in frenzies and almost seizures, that he had to piece them together and see which parts were going to be there and which parts were just total nonsense. When The Trial, The Castle, and America were published in the 1920s and the 1930s, the literary world was changed forever. As Europe succumbed to the horrors of World War II, totalitarian regimes, mass surveillance, and state-sponsored atrocities, readers realized that Kafka had not been writing mere fantasies. He had been writing a precise preview of the future because he had seen the intense complication of the bureaucratic processes that he knew this was just a matter of time. Franz Kafka never lived to see his name printed on millions of book covers. He never heard the applause of a literary crowd, nor did he know that his name would become a permanent part of human language. But his legacy endures as a universal shelter for anyone who has ever felt isolated, powerless, or lost in an unfeeling world. He proved that even from the quietest, most claustrophobic corner of existence, a single human mind can create art that echoes through eternity. Kafka's works, his frenzies, and his life will be remembered long after this day and long after he's gone. This was the life of Franz Kafka, a German writer and a legend.